Welcome back to Teacher Jeff 40K. Today I'm going to go back to my first love, the Space Marines. I've been talking about a lot of the new Tau stuff because the Tau Codex has come out, and there's still some things I want to get into. I actually had a very good game yesterday, actually, with my Tau army trying some new tactics, but I will talk about that somewhere else because this is not a Tau video. Today I want to talk about the differences, pros and cons, and what you should take when thinking about either a Dreadnought or a Venerable Dreadnought. I won't be talking about any of the special variants. I do have a video up on the Ironclad Dreadnought because I think he's fun as hell. But none of the Forge World stuff or anything like that, or the Contemptor or the new Primaris Dreadnought. I think there is a great little niche for the Venerable Dreadnought, and I'll explain why. There are so many reasons why I think the Venerable Dreadnought is one of the best in the book, if not the best. And I'm actually going to use that comparison as well to some of the other models, some of the different ones like the Contemptor and so on. But mostly I want to focus on the difference between a regular Dreadnought, the standard, and a Venerable Dreadnought. So standard Dreadnought is a pretty good choice. You've got a choice of some weapons. You can kit him out in certain ways for a little more close combat, or a little more shooting, or a mix of both, depending on what you want to do. Personally, my favorite type of Dreadnought is this, the Shooty Dreadnought. He's got a missile launcher, twin las cannon. I love this type of Dreadnought. Because for me, honestly, if I want to take a close combat Dreadnought, I just take an Ironclad, and I go raw close combat. But you can always find some like middle ground where you take, say, a regular Dreadnought, and instead of the missile launcher, you give him the Power Fist, and the las cannon, you give him something, a little closer, maybe an assault cannon or something like that. It's always a solid option. But I have to say that every time, if I'm thinking about choosing a Dreadnought, it will always be a Venerable Dreadnought over the standard Dreadnought type, for a variety of reasons. One, the point increase is only 20 points. So a standard Dreadnought, base cost 70 points in the Codex. A Venerable Dreadnought, base cost 90 points in the Codex. All weapon systems that they can take are the same. None of them have exclusive gear. And all the gear costs the same for both models. So you will only see a 20-point difference ever between a Venerable Dreadnought and a Dreadnought if they're equipped with the same things. So it'll only ever be exactly 20 points. And in my opinion, it is 20 points very well spent, for a variety of reasons. One, and the most obvious, is that the Venerable Dreadnought shoots and fights better. He hits on a 2+, both in melee and with shooting. Right away, that's a massive increase. You hit on 2s. And considering there are a lot of things in armies that allow you to reroll 1s, a guy like this, I'll show you my other Dreadnought now, a guy like this is virtually guaranteed to hit. It's never a true guarantee, but I say virtually because he hits on 2s and he can reroll 1s with, maybe there's a captain nearby or something, giving him some rerolls. That's very reliable firepower. And another thing, too, that actually benefits all Dreadnoughts is the fact that chapter tactics affect them, which is very cool. So this guy is leaps and bounds, in my opinion, better than a Predator tank. Because a Predator tank, 1, is a larger target. 2, it degrades. It has a degrading profile because it has so many wounds. And 3, it will never benefit from any chapter tactics. So, I come back to the Venerable Dreadnought and why it's better. The 2+ to hit, both in fighting, in close combat, and shooting. And then, it also has another rule, a small built-in ability called Unyielding Ancient, Roll a d6 each time this model loses a wound. On a 6, the damage is ignored, and that wound is not lost. So he becomes both offensively more capable and slightly more defensive for only 20 points. And it makes the weapons that you spend so much on worthwhile, or more worthwhile. So it's 50 points for the twin las cannon and 25 for the missile launcher. So that's 75 points in weapons that is now becoming a lot more reliable by just spending that extra 20 points. And I think it's totally worth it every time. And you get that little built-in ability, if he suffers a wound, there's a chance he just won't. You can roll a 6 and he won't lose that wound. And it's worth noting too, if you do want to use Iron Hand's chapter tactics, this is 2 separate rules. So you will get 2 rolls of a 6+ to ignore wounds. So you get his armor save first, 3+ armor, Space Marines. Then you get your chapter tactics, and then he has this unyielding ancient ability. So you have 2 chances to roll a 6 and ignore wounds. It makes him very, very durable. Also, like I mentioned when I talked about the Predator tank, both the Dreadnought and the Venerable Dreadnought get this though. They're only 8 wounds. Now, it's fewer wounds, sure. But because they are under 10 wounds, they never suffer from any degradation. So this guy right here shoots just as well on 8 wounds as he does on 1. So that is a massive, massive boost, in my opinion. Yes, not as many wounds, but man, if this guy just gets whittled down, he's just as effective at like 1 or 2 wounds. So that's not something you really need to worry about too much. Also, the Predator is more expensive because you're equipping it with more weapons. So yeah, I find these guys are solid choices. Venerable Dreadnoughts, absolutely. And that, by that same token, that is why earlier I said I think they're better in ways than the other 2 Dreadnought variants, the Contemptor Dreadnought and the Redemptor. Because both the Contemptor and the Redemptor each have 10 or more wounds, and they suffer from the degrading profile, which sucks. I've wanted to like the Redemptor Dreadnought so much, and I do like some of the weapons that come with it, but it's the same. They're the same toughness, both the Contemptor and the Redemptor, both toughness 7. They just have a couple more wounds, and it's not worth getting a degrading profile for a couple more wounds. It really isn't. Because all of a sudden, when you lose 5 wounds on a Contemptor Dreadnought, it goes down. And yeah, he starts off very good. He starts off with ballistic skill and weapon skill 2+, but it's not enough to give me, it's not enough to make me want to get this guy. And that's another thing, actually, when I look at this guy, the Contemptor, very limited options when it comes to equipment. And the Redemptor Dreadnought, while it does have a whole bunch of cool weapon options, you can never swap out the close combat weapon. And honestly, this close combat weapon, the Redemptor Fist, I do not like it at all. So I'll read it off to you just quickly. You let me know what you think. Strength ×2. So it's worth noting the Redemptor Dreadnought is strength 7. So this is strength 14, which is very good. But -3 AP, expected, D6 damage. Not a fan. Not a fan of D6 damage, man. Honestly, a Dreadnought close combat weapon is a flat 3 damage. I would take that any day of the week over D6 damage. Sure, you have the potential to do more damage. You also have the potential to roll a 1 and get 1 damage, or 2. In which case, 2 cases, it's worse. Yeah, sure, 2 cases it's better, and 1 it's exactly the same. Or rather, 3 cases it's better. 4, 5, 6. But still, it's not worth it for that. And you can't choose to replace that. So you have to pay, or do you pay the points for the Redemptor Fist? I don't think you do, because this is the only unit that gets it, and that's usually how things work in the Codex. There's only one unit that gets something, then yeah, it's 0 points, the Redemptor Fist. But still, I don't like the fact that I don't have the options to swap that out. And like I said, if I'm going to go with close combat, I take the Ironclad any day, because this guy is made for wrecking tanks. The Dreadnought Chain Fist is fantastic. Anyhow, I discussed that, I think, further in my Ironclad Dreadnought video. But yeah, every day of the week, if ever I want to choose a Dreadnought that shoots, or maybe it does a little bit of both, something like that, I will always pick the Venerable Dreadnought over the regular Dreadnought model, and by that token too, over any of the other Dreadnought variants, the Redemptor, the Contemptor, those ones there. One, because I don't want to buy the models for those, because they're I don't know, I find them underwhelming, and two, because the Venerable Dreadnought just seems like in a great little spot of like cost effectiveness, value, and talent. He's just good. He's very good, and he's hitting on twos with everything. That's awesome. Very, very, very cool. And yeah, again, benefiting from chapter tactics as a Dreadnought, I find puts him in a better league than, say, your battle tanks. Anything from a Predator to a Vindicator to anything like that, I find the Venerable Dreadnought beats them out for anti-tank warfare. And it rivals the Devastator squads, because the Devastator squads do also benefit from chapter tactics, and they can have their own sort of groups and buffs and things like that that make them really awesome too. So very often I have a hard time choosing. I like both of them. I like both the Venerable Dreadnought and Devastator squads as my tank-killing firepower, because they've got long range, they've got talent, they can be boosted, they're affected by chapter tactics, and in my opinion, they are cost-effective as anti-tank warfare. Anti-infantry, now you could take a couple of the Dreadnought weapon options from the index. I'm not sure if you would be paying a premium or not, because some index things are more expensive. Because a lot of things in the codex, a lot of the weapons for Dreadnoughts were removed, which is too bad. So autocannons, for example. I remember there was a variant where you could have 2 twin autocannons. So twin autocannon. And it would be pretty cheap too. And he would just sit at the back and fire his autocannons. And that's no longer an option. So the Dreadnought heavy weapons are only the assault cannon, which is good. The heavy plasma cannon, which I'm not sold on the plasma cannons. I want to love plasma cannons so much because they look cool, but I'm not. They seem very, very specific, and for that role, I'd rather just have guys with plasma guns. The multi-melta, which, again, moving and firing it, not sold on it. You get the reduction to your hit rolls because it's a heavy weapon, you move and fire. And the twin las cannon, which, I love totally. And then, of course, it has the option to replace its close combat weapon, so the fist. It's got an option to replace that with a missile launcher. It used to have the option to replace that as well with a twin autocannon, like I said. And there were a few others. There was twin heavy bolter, which, it's an option, but I don't think I'd ever take it because it's so dirty cheap, and I don't know, I feel like I could get strength 5 shots from something else. There was I think a twin heavy flamer, which I was curious about, because that would be fun to use. Like if you had a close combat weapon with a heavy flamer, and then a twin heavy flamer on the other side, that'd be pretty beastly. And then he charges into close combat. I'm kind of curious about that. Yeah, like I said, you could always choose how you want to equip these guys or what you want to take, or maybe the not carries pattern, that's the assault cannon. Maybe the Contemptor Dreadnought is the one for you. I don't know. I know they've got some interesting stats. I know they move a little faster or something. But honestly, if you are using a Dreadnought to gun things down, and you're not getting shit from Forge World, because I know there's some out there that have all kinds of guns and stuff like that. I haven't even looked into that shit. But if you are looking in the Codex for things to, for heavy weapons to gun things down, the Venerable Dreadnought is a terrific option. It hits well. It's got good weapon systems. You get 3 shots out of it. It takes advantage of chapter tactics, which is awesome. Special note to Salamander's chapter tactics, which allows you to reroll 1 hit and 1 wound anytime a unit shoots or fights, which means these 3 super strong shots that already hit on 2s and might be boosted by a character nearby also get a reroll. So if you don't have a character nearby, you do get a reroll to hit, and you can get a reroll to wound as well, which is actually probably more valuable, because some things like, for example, you might be wounding things on 3s with your las cannons. You roll a 2. 2 is my least favorite number in this game. At least 1s can be rerolled. 2s are poison. But I digress. Anyhow, yeah, Venerable Dreadnought, totally the way to go. I would always pay the 20 more points. Unless there's something you're really trying to pull off and you don't have the points and it really like busts up your list and ruins it and you can't do it anymore, I would say like 99 times out of 100 I would take the Venerable Dreadnought over the regular Dreadnought model. The 20 points is always worth the extra skill and the extra reliability and the extra resilience. Anyhow, how do you feel about Dreadnoughts? Let me know.